I have officially reached a level of embarrassment most people don't survive. And I want to be very specific about the nature of this embarrassment, because it's not the garden variety kind. It's not the I tripped in public kind or the I replied all to a company email kind. This is the kind of embarrassment that shows up in quarterly financial reports. The kind that makes accountants stare at a spreadsheet and quietly wonder if they've had a stroke. This is the story of how I accidentally processed $28 million in alcohol sales on a slow Tuesday, and then had to do math homework for 2 hours to fix it. Grab something to drink. Ironically, I'd recommend not making it expensive wine. Let me set the scene. It's December 26th, the day after Christmas. If you've ever worked retail, you know this specific energy, the post-holiday wasteland where nobody wants to be at work, nobody wants to be shopping, and the whole world is operating at about 40% capacity. The store was quiet, genuinely, eerily quiet. The kind of quiet where you can hear the refrigerators humming and start having philosophical thoughts you really shouldn't be having on the clock. Me and my coworker, I'll call him Kyle because he has the energy of a Kyle, and I say that with full affection, we had essentially run out of things to do. Everything was stocked. Everything was clean. We had approximately 45 minutes left on the shift and absolutely zero customers. Now, here's something you should know about me and Kyle. We are individually perfectly responsible employees. Together, however, we are a disaster waiting to happen. Something about the specific combination of our personalities in a room with nothing to do creates a kind of low-level chaos energy that, on this particular evening, would achieve its final form. It started innocently, almost sweetly. I picked up one of those miniature bottles of alcohol, you know, the little airplane-sized ones that people buy as stocking stuffers or to get through family events. It was roughly the size of my thumb. I scanned it. Then I scanned it again. Then again. The devil on my shoulder said, "Keep going." The angel on my other shoulder said, "This seems fine." Neither of them was particularly helpful in retrospect. Kyle was watching, grinning. I kept scanning. 10 bottles. 20. 50. The number on the register screen was climbing in a way that was genuinely entertaining when the stakes felt completely imaginary, because we were never going to complete this transaction. Obviously, this was purely aesthetic chaos. A joke with no punchline required. Then Kyle, who I want to be clear contributed enormously to what followed, had what he described as a great idea. "Wait," he said, with the energy of a man who is about to make things significantly worse. "Let me check what's in the system." Here is where you should pause the video and ask yourself, has a sentence that started with "let me check what's in the system" ever ended well? In the history of sentences, has that one ever led somewhere good? It has not. Kyle navigated to the wine section of the inventory, the expensive wine section specifically, and found a bottle. One bottle. Nearly $10,000 per unit. He set the quantity to 999. Trust me, it gets worse. I want you to really sit with that number. 999 bottles of $9,000 wine on a Tuesday in a liquor store where the most exciting thing that had happened all day was a man buying a six-pack and making small talk about the football. The running total hit approximately $9 million. We were not okay. We were laughing the way you laugh when something is so far beyond normal that your brain just gives up trying to process it and converts everything to serotonin instead. Kyle was doubled over. I was genuinely struggling to breathe. The register screen was displaying a number that I'm pretty sure most small countries would consider a significant portion of their GDP. And then, because we are who we are, Kyle found another bottle. This one was nearly $20,000 per unit. He looked at me. I looked at him. Neither of us said anything. He set the quantity to 999. $28 million. $28 million on a cash register screen in a liquor store on the 26th of December, rung up by two people who were being paid somewhere in the range of $15 an hour. Now here is where I need to take personal responsibility. And I do, fully. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. I thought it would be funny, just for the absolute peak of the bit, to navigate the transaction forward. Just to see all the screens. Just to experience, visually and spiritually, what it looks like to be processing $28 million in alcohol. So I brought it forward, and forward, and forward, all the way to the final confirmation screen. The screen that said, Confirm cash payment of $28 million? One button. One single button standing between us and the worst day of my professional life. The angel on my shoulder said, "Okay, we've gone far enough. Back it out now." The devil said, "But what if?" Cal pressed enter. "I need you to understand the specific quality of the silence that followed. It was not the silence of nothing happening. It was the silence of something having already happened, of a transaction, somewhere in the digital ether, completing itself with quiet, devastating finality. Of $28 million in theoretical cash being logged, confirmed, and filed into the day's records as if it were simply another sale. The register showed, transaction complete. I turned to Kyle. Kyle turned to me. His eyes were doing something I can only describe as going through the 5 stages of grief in real time, with a significant emphasis on stage 2. "Did you?" I started. "I thought you were still on the," he said. "I was on the confirm screen," I said. "I thought you were still on the confirm screen, Kyle." We tried to void it. Immediately, desperately, with the energy of 2 people trying to stuff a very large disaster back into a very small box. The system, with the serene indifference of all computerized things, informed us that the maximum return per transaction was $1 million. I stared at that for a moment. $28 million. $1 million at a time. You can do that math yourself. I'll wait. That's right. 28 returns. 28 separate $1 million return transactions, each one needing to be processed individually, each one a small additional monument to the choices that had led us here. I stood at that register in the final 40 minutes of my shift, doing the most surreal accounting of my life, reversing $1 million of fictional wine at a time with the focused determination of a man who has absolutely no one to blame but himself. And here's the thing, technically, we fixed it. The inventory was corrected. The cash balance was back to normal. From a practical standpoint, no real money changed hands, no actual bottles were moved, and the store was, physically, exactly as it had been an hour earlier. From a statistical standpoint, however, the day's report now showed $28 million in revenue followed by $28 million in returns, which I'm told makes the graphs look like something a seismograph produces during an earthquake. Higher-ups were going to see this. There was no question about that. I didn't sleep well that night. I arrived at the store the next morning before my manager, I'll call her Sandra, because she has the energy of a Sandra, which is to say the energy of a person who has seen things and has opinions about them, and I waited, outside, in the cold, like a man preparing to confess at a tribunal. When she arrived, I walked up to her before she'd even gotten her keys out and said, "I need to talk to you about something that happened yesterday." And I told her everything. All of it. The mini bottle. The shooters. The $9,000 wine. Quantity 999. The $20,000 wine. Quantity also 999. The confirmation screen. Kyle's enter key. The 28 individual $1 million returns. I presented it completely, accurately, and with the energy of someone who has accepted their fate and would simply like it to be over quickly. Sandra looked at me for a long moment. "You were bored," she said. "Extremely," I confirmed. She was frustrated. She was disappointed, and I want to be clear that disappointed from a manager lands significantly harder than angry, because anger is just emotion, but disappointment implies a prior belief in you that has now been revised. She told us the higher-ups would review it, that there would likely be a formal warning, that it would go in our files. And then she went inside and started her shift. I stood there for a moment, breathing in the cold December air, recalibrating. A warning, a note in a file, $28 million in the report, a record that would confuse financial analysts for approximately 1 meeting before being explained and dismissed. All things considered, and I am aware this makes me sound completely unhinged, it could have been worse. The wine, for the record, we never actually had in stock anyway.